I will call this meeting to order, and please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sometimes. That's done. All right, first item up is the town administrator. Thank you for coming.
No problem.
I know this is a second calling. The weather issue the last time. I requested that you come, it was an agenda request by member Will Spring. With regards to budget versus actual format, and specifically there was an item that was in one of your weekly reports with regards to tracking snow and ice was one item with regards to the spending. And I believe Will's point was, if we can do that for one, why can't we have this detailed format for the regularly issued budget versus actual, be it quarterly, monthly, et cetera? I'll let Will address his specific
Sure.
question if he wishes.
Yeah, I'll expound on that. Article 4 of bylaws says we have free access to the books. Section 5 basically says that committees, boards,
No, Eric,
departments shall provide the data that we look for, that we want, that this committee asks for in the format that we have. My contention is by saying that they have the inability to do that, we're breaking a bylaw, number one. I don't understand why we would end up not being able to create that. Couple instances is that you have an accountant, you have an assistant. That query can be called up, the old query can be called up and saved. And the assistant could easily have generated that report on a monthly basis. If we were asking this for a daily or a weekly report, I can see that puts a lot of strain. But that they can end up getting this on a monthly basis does not seem like it's being enough transparency and in the sense of working together. That's my feelings on it, and I think that if you look at any other communities, you'll end up seeing that the request comes from either finance or advisory for this type of report, and it's sent out by those people that do it on a daily basis, and that they can end up spending this year $1,700 and again $750 for a grand total of $2,750 of the taxpayers' money when we are not following the bylaw is not the thing that I would like to end up seeing done.
are you done, Mr. Spring?
Yes.
Well, first, some of it may be communication. Let me say that we have, as you know, 7 basic sub-accounts for each department. And we do generate monthly a budget versus actual report. Those were supplied to the committee, to the best of my knowledge, on a monthly basis. In fact, I provided your chairman with 3 emails dated some point in October, November, and December submitting those reports. The quarterly, that does not come out, and I think I had Holly put those in your box until generally the third week of the month following the quarter. Now, I can understand that the change to the 7 accounts, because they had not named each department in the reports, was a little bit confusing. So I went back to the accountant and asked her to insert into the top of each one, and you'll see here. So Department 120 is now actually named Selectmen, so you don't have to have that little chart to convert it. So it's at the top and the bottom of each department. And Jeff, I'm gonna give you, do we have an extra one there?
Yeah, that's the extra.
Okay. Jeff, I'm gonna give you 3 for your committee members. You can't be here this evening.
All right, thank you.
Okay. So by putting the department name both at the begin and the completion of those sub-accounts, that should make it a little bit easier for you to find them more quickly and refer to them. And I will make sure, the accountant had been on the quarterly, been waiting until that had been presented to the selectmen, and then we would forward that. I'll make sure that you get these monthly. So this provides you the same information that the department heads have on a regular basis. So I'm not sure where the disconnect is. If, I saw the emails, I saw the advisory board was tagged. If your chairman's not getting them, they're coming to advisory at templeton1.org or whatever it is. Jeff, if you're not getting those, my apologies on the breakdown in communication. We can certainly fix that easily enough.
I believe they're going to individual emails, but I don't believe they,
I'd have to go back and, you
Advisory,
have the
absolutely.
emails there. The
Right.
first one is advisory. But if they're going out to the individuals, that's even a wider distribution than
I think
thought.
the, my concern is, or my issue, say I'm looking under 200, it says police and dispatch.
Mhm.
It says personnel.
Yep.
Now, I know we
You would like
I-
the old system where
I
it
think
said
we have
police chief,
espoused,
52%. It said sergeants. It said dispatch. It's, that chart of account doesn't exist anymore. And that is one of the reasons that we asked you if you wanted to consider, you are the only finance or advisory committee in the state of Massachusetts that has the kind of access to financial data that you now have. There are communities which do have 2 accounts. One's personnel, one's all others. We have 7 sub-accounts to track these things. I understand, it was nice, fuel oil, I went in town, it had gasoline, diesel, propane, heating fuel oil. I mean, I get it, but it's exhausting and not organizationally efficient. But you can now look that up. You can look up anything you want. And it is not, that was the decision of the committee, the kind of access they wanted, and they voted on it.
Right.
Excuse me?
And we didn't quarrel with your interpretation of the statute when you made that transfer to do that.
the question I have is, and I'll just use, I'm looking at the police.
Sure.
It's right here on the page. The department head, if this is what they get,
Yeah.
how does the police chief look at a budget versus actual, say, and readily see how much of his salary has been paid,
He
or
doesn't
his,
need to.
or his office expense?
He
How does
doesn't.
he manage his budget if he doesn't know that he spent 80% of his office expense budget for whatever reason in January, and he's got the rest of the year to go?
Because he doesn't need to, because he has a bottom line to work against. And if he has overspent on envelopes, that's his job to figure out if he's gonna underspend on
But that's
on
what I mean.
filing
He
index
can't,
cards.
he can't see the individual expense.
He doesn't need to.
How does he manage his budget if he can't see the
He
line
has his
item?
bottom line, he has his own internal spreadsheet and whatever division that he's done there. Even before, there was all kinds of things. That the budget didn't break everything down. Sure, at home, we have a budget for the mortgage and a home for budget maybe for heat and for electric. These departments operate at a different level, and this provides them, together with whatever spreadsheets they keep on their own, with more than sufficient information to stay on track.
Well,
And I think you'll see that they're all, actually, this is as of December 31, and they're all doing very well. And whenever a department starts to go a little bit over, you'll see in the quarterly reports, we will address. Okay, so this is what we call time trend or burn rate. So we're 50% through the year. Most people reviewing this would assume that we've burnt 50% of our cash, that the cash is burnt at the same timeline as we're at. And what we have the accountant do, when you get a chance to look at those quarterlies, you may have noticed that it'll say something like, yep, we spent 90%, but that's because the software license gets paid on July 1. In one community, I had a city council want to cut the insurance line item because we'd only spent about 18%. But the bill came in on the 1st of June. They just hadn't seen it come through yet. But so for instance, overall, selectmen have spent about 37% of their budget halfway through the year. Accountant, 43%. Assessor, 51%. Everybody's under 36, 38, 44, 51, 40, 46. The debt is about 65%, but that's because those come in and you pay them off cycle. Same on, for instance, and I know, Jeff, this was of interest to you at one time. You said, how do we know if we've paid the Worcester Regional Retirement System? You can do one of two things. If you've got a one-off question like that, just ask us. Easy enough to hit reply. Or now with the access you have, you guys can look it up. And insurance and benefits, we've burnt about 62%. One of the reasons is $600,000 of that is Worcester Regional Retirement. So on about the third day of the fiscal year, we've spent 25% of the account. The department heads, frankly, seem very pleased with this.
Do the department heads have access to the VADAR system themselves?
They do not.
Okay.
so,
They do not, but what we do provide them with, most of them all track their own expenditures internally in their own method, whatever they use, whether it's stickies or a little Excel spreadsheet or however they do it. The other thing that we do is that if something doesn't seem quite right, if they're trending off a little bit, what I do is I review these every month with Kelly, and I go through and I'm like, why is this doesn't seem right? Why doesn't this seem right? So what we will do, Paul, is print off what we call a detailed expenditure report for the sub-account, because I find often what generally happens when something's out of sync, it's often a miscoding. Yes, it was budgeted here, but perhaps it really is a different sub-account, or somebody's not familiar with the coding and they coded incorrectly. And we just then do a journal entry.
Okay. At the time of payment, you're saying it was miscoded?
Yes.
Okay.
And in some cases, especially when you make an account conversion, so stamps. Is that purchase a service or is that a supply? Some different departments have it a little bit differently and we just didn't catch it. So sometimes it does take a couple years to get everybody lined up with, nope, you know, water bills are a purchase of service, they're not a supply.
Mhm.
Gasoline is supplied, not a service kind of thing.
Mr. Chairman? if I could. My understanding is that when the training happened, the old format was shown to the trainer and said that was very possible for that type of report to be generated. My question goes back to the TA as to why can't that be something that's generated now? I mean, I understand that once the query is created, it can be saved, and it takes just a matter of going into that query and creating that query for a certain specific time frame.
We have a chart of accounts. We will produce reports for you on that chart of accounts. If you have something different that you want to do, you have read-only access, and you are welcome to do it in any fashion you would like. I'm not completely familiar with exactly what was asked of the trainer. I certainly don't know how he may have interpreted the question. But if you want to ask a question like, how much was paid for, I don't know, I can't even envision something here, by the police department for envelopes, you can do it one of two ways. You can go look at the detail of the sub-account. Envelopes are theoretically supplies. You can open that up, and you'll never figure it out because it's maybe Staples. Or if you know the town buys all envelopes from Staples, you can open up the Staples account, the payments to that particular vendor, and you'll never figure it out because you don't know if that's envelopes or papers or pens. But if that's what you want to do, you guys have complete and total access. I think we let you choose whatever day you wanted to have the training. We left all that to you. I just don't know what else to say.
Yeah, Will, I think there was 4 of us that attended the training.
Yep.
And I had some information. We haven't been able to meet for a couple of sessions since then. I've been sending out examples of some of the detailed reports that we thought, you know, would be helpful. It may not be, but because we haven't had a chance to get together and discuss it in more detail, maybe the reports that I've sent out haven't been as helpful as they could be. But from what I've seen, the system certainly provides the level of detail that, you know, we would need to investigate. So if we see something at a department level or even at
Well, my
spending
thing is,
category level,
my thing, Paul, is that the budget basically has account numbers that are under personnel, there's sub account numbers under each of these. And I'm not looking to see how many envelopes, I'm looking to end up seeing how much under those sub-accounts, under personnel, support, et cetera, is spent. And that would indicate that particular account number may or may not be overspent. It's hidden, per se, when you end up bringing it to the next level up. I know we've made some inquiries previously to end up having accounts that were overspent. My interpretation is that if we identify those as a committee, we would end up, or the TA would end up seeing those and make an inquiry as to what happened. Not, to me, that's not a big deal. It seems that because we asked that question, we've now ended up collapsing it so we couldn't see that level of detail that we had last July. And when he was shown the report, it was to that level that we had been getting up until July. This town did not vote to take it, end up collapsing it to this level in the budget. I'm sorry, I'd like to see the warrant article that said that we're gonna collapse it to this level within within the budget, because we have account numbers down to the next level.
Mr. Chairman, if I may respond, first, I'd like to go back to Mr. Spring's initial statements in which he described the expense of your access to the system as being $2,750. That in fact is not accurate, as are, with due respect to Mr. Spring, a number of his statements that he makes from time to time. Now, it was $1,700, that's what the board voted upon, that's what the board transferred, and I would have believed that members of the board would have been aware of motions that it took and acted upon. With respect to the it's not transparent, I don't know how much is being spent on personnel. Well, I mean, I can only point to the report. Department 120, Selectmen, personnel, 35.46% has been expended year to date. With respect to the accountant, 48.45%, assessor, 47.21%, treasurer collector, 52.49%, and I'm not gonna bore you to walk you through the entire report. But it lets you see we're at 50% of the year, and the departments should all be right around 50%. You know, there might be a percentage or two off. That can be driven by overtime. It can be driven by vacancies. In the treasurer collector's office, that was driven by the need to make some adjustments there as we bought the new treasurer in. But when you look right straight down, personnel 41.88, 44.6, 47.75, 38.89, 41.78, 52.76 on the personnel side. That is driven primarily because the seasonal laborers are loaded towards the front end. We bring one in early April, keep one till about the 1st of September. The other one doesn't come in later. So the majority of theirs is burnt towards the front end. So with respect to tracking the item that was cited, I think it's very easy to see exactly how much was spent.
Mr. Chairman, if I can, respond to his thing about the amount. This year, we spent $700 to get access, $1,000 for training. In the budget, if this committee wants access next year, it's in the budget of $750. My math shows me that if you add all of that up, that's $2,750.
And as I understand the committee system to work, sir, you should take that up with the members of your committee who were presented with the cost, presented with this opportunity, and voted, I don't remember the exact vote, that is how they wanted to proceed. We did present some other options. We offered, you know, I think we even gave you the paycheck register as an example, and the accounts payable to see what was being paid out for each.
Well,
So I think that's a
my thing
discussion-
was, is that
Excuse me,
you
sir.
gave me no
Hey,
choice.
sir,
You gave this
please.
committee no choice.
Hold it, let's,
Mr.
I know
Chairman,
we
I
have
tried
a-
hard not
I
to
know-
interrupt your member, and I would ask
I know
that
we
your
have
member
a,
give
we
me
have
the
a
same.
philosophical difference here, and we're gonna probably end up agreeing to disagree. As to the point of how we voted or asked, I believe the discussion came around, well, we could either ask to get the training and have direct access, or because one of the reasons was, if we want detailed stuff, we meet, we vote on what we want to ask questions for, we point somebody to email the question to Kelly or you or both, and then it would be hence 2 weeks. And the thought was, if we had direct access, and we weren't quite aware of, only one person can be on at a time, but if we had access, if we wanted to do it at a meeting, if we wanted to look something up, we could do it.
Any member,
Which is the case that we can do now.
and any member, you know, you can't have more than one member at a time. But all 7 members have that access. Now, we obviously would expect that you would respect the fact that it's one username, one password, and it's for the members of this body, not others. We have, within the accounting system, endeavored to give you the best possible access in a manner that lets you see what you want without getting lost in the weeds. And I will, there's just not much more I can say than that.
And we even, with regards to the training, the four of us that were there, we even, once we found out it was, one because I asked the question, what happens if she's on and I go to get on? You're essentially gonna kick her off. So we kicked it around that, well, Paul said, well, I'm gonna go home and try to work on this. I said, well, I'm a night owl, so I'll be on like 3 in the
Sure.
morning. And the guy said, well, the trainer said, well, don't call, I said, I won't call you at 3 in the morning.
Don't call
if I
for
have
support at
questions."
3 in the morning.
Right, but, and then Julie was, she says, well, I'll be on at this time or whatever, or we'll email and say, hey, when are you going on? And that's what the four, and we haven't met as a committee since the training to, so everybody can come to a consensus on how we would approach that.
I do believe that when we submitted the information to the board, I do believe we let the board know before you made your decision that it was gonna have to be a shared.
Yeah,
'cause
that was something understood right from the beginning.
But we kind of kicked it around is when, as the four of us were there, like, well, if I go on, I'm a 3 in the morning guy. And then
well, God,
whoever we're
God,
gonna do it,
the only thing I wanna see at 3 in the morning is the inside of my eyelids.
so that's, the four of us that were there kind of kicked around like how we would approach this access thing.
But it's something that we thought we could, we
We
would,
could manage
coordinate,
or-
manage it.
Sure.
yeah.
Or we could even just do it here at a meeting.
Right.
Because we can get online and do it that way. So, and Paul has, I think he's played around with it more than anybody, has generated a few sample reports already. Talked to Kelly, got the sub-accounts, looked at Snow and Ice, group insurance, and I think one other stuff.
Snow and ice you can look at in real time. I track them weekly because I need to keep an eye as to deficits. And so the Highway Department provides me with a report that is more than financial. The first thing is it shows me how much you've spent and where you are in relation to your budget. It then shows me how many pieces of equipment went down during that storm. That's important to me because I need to be able to have that kind of real, not just anecdotal, but data to say to the Capitol, to say to the others. Did you know that during that storm, 5 pieces of equipment went down, and they were down for fill in how long it takes Bob to get them back on the road. And then if there's something major, I want to know why. So we had 3 loaders go down. Why? It had been treated, the diesel fuel had been treated to about -15. I'm told wasn't enough. So we've adjusted what we've instructed the dealer to treat it to a lower level. There are 2 other pieces of equipment that have some different issues. So that report lets me stay up to date week by week without having to go across to the accountant and say, where are we? Where are we? How much did we spend? Also, because the accountant's report is a cash report. The public works report that I get is the invoices that come up and may not yet have been processed for payment and made it through the system. So the report that I get is more in real time, and it has additional information that's important to me. Do I track other things like that? Frankly, no, I don't. Because they're not that important. Because the managers can manage, and I can deal it when I look at the monthly, and we can deal with it, on the quarterly basis.
Yes.
I was gonna say, I'm just kind of sitting here, I've been taking it all in, and if my memory serves me correctly, and I'm new to this venue, but this meeting is right now is basically had been required by the change that happened in the budget versus actual, in the way the account was listed.
The chart of accounts.
Right, the chart of accounts and how they appeared. And, we had asked if we could get the, you know, the old chart of accounts back, the way it was listed before, in the detail it was listed before. And in some form or fashion, we were told that that didn't exist anymore. So there was an option of VADAR or, you know, to take what, you know, we had and try and figure that out in some form or fashion to work for us. We went with the VADAR, did the training, but at the training, and I mean, I was one of the ones that asked, and we had a copy of the old report and the new report. And we asked Ted, who was the trainer, specifically, you know, can this report be generated now? And his answer was just a straight yes. There wasn't a hesitation, there wasn't a no. He looked at it, he actually took the piece of paper, looked at it, looked at the way the accounts were denoted and so forth. I believe that's what he did, and said yes. We have not, as of yet, we have not been able to, you know, let's say, determine our access and how that all works and so forth. But my question, very simply put, is if we can't generate that level of detail for our accounts, okay, fine, absolutely fine across the board. If we can, in any form or fashion, shouldn't we, rather than spending the money in this fashion? That is my only concern with this.
Here's what I would suggest, because I don't believe Ted.
Okay, that's your right.
I would, get a little more familiar with it. And support is part of what we get. So call him up and say, hey, Ted, this is Bob. It's not 3 a.m., so it's not Jeff. I'm looking at the old account number, whatever it was, and you said that I could run a data point, a report, for this old account number out of these new account numbers. Can you tell me how to do that? If that can really be done, then you come on in, you tell us, we'll sit down with you, show us how to do it, and then we can have the conversation with you. But since nothing is coded now the way it was coded before, I'm struggling to understand how that can happen. I'm not going to say it can't be done. I am going to tell you I'm struggling to understand how it's done. But if it can be, I'd be happy to sit down and chat with you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. In the budget, those even in the new ones that you sent out to us, it shows those sub-accounts under these.
No,
So
it shows a
did-
break, I'm sorry, my apologies, Mr. Spring, I shouldn't have
Yes,
interrupted.
it shows those sub-accounts under these accounts.
They're not
If you're
sub-accounts.
creating those and you have account numbers in your budget document, what stops us from getting that if that information gets put in?
Because they are not sub-accounts of the sub-account. They are a breakdown. There is no number attached to those. Nothing is coded to those. Is that your budget book?
That's not mine, it's,
Will you- Bob, may I see that for a moment?
Absolutely.
Can you get that? So, I'm gonna pick highway, because they've got quite a few items in some of theirs. 58. Okay, I fibbed, I'm going with buildings and grounds, because that has more items. So, I would invite you to look at this. This is account 5200. This is the purchase of service. This is a breakdown that shows you how many quantities there are, what the per quantity item costs, what is the description of that item, what is their request for the year, and what am I recommending. There are no numbers tied to that. Everything gets coded to the 5200 account. There's no sub-accounts of the sub-account. You would have to, if that's what you're interested in doing, you would have to then create yet another number for every single one of those items.
the POs, the actual payments made out, would be able to track to those subcategories.
Yes,
So the detail is there.
yes.
It's just
If
in
you,
the actual
if you were interested to find out, you could run
If you
Staples.
Look at the
You can
digital.
open that up,
Mhm.
and you can see everybody that bought from
This one
Staples
doesn't.
and what account they bought it out of. Okay, so that's one way to do it. You run an individual vendor report.
Right.
And that's an interesting report because it shows the challenges of complying with Chapter 30B. That is a report that I run from time to time to try to get a sense of, where are we with these individual vendors? Because Chapter 30B controls how much we spend as a town collectively, not department by department.
Right.
The other way that it can be done, if you're interested to find out, well, how are they using their 5,200 account? How are they using their 5,600 account? Their 5,100 account, 5,100 being the personnel itself. You can open that up and see out of the 5,200 account, I think that's, you got that? Sorry, I've been using this for a number of years and never still remembered off the top of my head. Supplies, the 5,400 account, okay? So if you're interested in what Highway's done with their 5,400 account, open it up and you can see
All the
they
payments.
got some 2x4s at Chairtown Lumber, they got this, they got that. Now, if Pam makes a mistake and she codes what should have been a building and grounds expense, that's sometimes, we catch those at times too. But you can look at that right down to, you can't look at the check register and figure it out that way. Because the check register does is if we have 3 departments that week that bought something from Chairtown Lumber out of 3 accounts, the software program says, oh, I see we have 3 checks going to Chairtown Lumber. Why do we want to do that? Let's just write them one. And they combine them.
Right. And that's the level of detail in the reports that I distribute.
I emailed those to everybody, I believe twice, but I know I just forwarded them.
And so this access that you are the only one in the state of Massachusetts, to the best of our knowledge, that has, really, without anything being lost in interpretation about Carter can get a report on this, and I don't quite understand, really is opening up a substantial amount of information to you. And you can query it in many different ways. Again, Bob, I don't think it can be queried that way, but I would invite you to have that conversation with them and then come on in and show us. But if you look through all those are explanations of the account, not item by item sub-accounts down through. I'd have to create a different, I can't even imagine how many account codes I'd have to create. Well, strike that. I can't imagine how many codes I'd have to have Kelly create.
Yeah.
All right, does anyone have anything else on this for the town administrator while he's here?
Well,
I mean, I will just say, I'm here. I don't mind staying a little bit longer if there's something, that you, is on your mind. Certainly, and if I don't have the answer tonight, we can try to get you the answer for your next meeting.
With regards to, off this topic, with regards to the email about the budget process and
Mhm.
schedule, and I've been watching your weekly reports. Is that schedule still?
It is
Much.
still what we gave you when we sent the budget guidance out. Presentation on February 26th, then we'll pick up the next week. I think we have 2 workshops scheduled. Still joint board meetings. Doing my very best to make sure that they're fully participative of all the members of the 2 boards. That's the whole point of it. But we're on schedule. Now, you will see in tomorrow's report, I don't have school numbers yet. One of the things that you may see, the select board asked for a joint meeting with Phillipston. And one of the things that we would like to talk with them about is amending the regional school district to be a little bit more aggressive on their timetable of getting us budget numbers. Ideally, I would get their draft budget on or about February 15, so I can include it in mine. Because to release a town budget that doesn't have school numbers in it, and then ideally, we would get a final budget from the school district on or about March 15, so we can get you something on or about April 1. So we don't have school numbers yet, Jeff. At this point, I'm working with a hope that they'll ask for only 2.5% increase over this year. That's what I'm baking into my number right now. We don't have health insurance numbers. We have met in last week's report. If you're watching the reports, we did meet with Maya, and we're hoping we're going to be in the mid-curve, 4%, plus or minus, as opposed to last year's. We do have cherry sheet now. So we've plugged in House 1. That's the policy that we're following. And I don't think we have anything really drastic in our numbers beyond that. We have retirement system, we don't have the breakdown by unit yet. So we're looking
But
pretty
the
good.
schedule that was emailed out was pretty much,
Yeah.
we can
We're looking pretty
plan
good.
on that.
You say we're looking pretty good, but watching the workshop, it appears that we're about $300,000 to $350,000 for ALS in the fire department. That's gonna be a problem.
Well, Mr.
And there was talk about an override at that workshop.
First, your chairman asked about the schedule, and I was responding, so perhaps I should have been clearer. With respect to the schedule, we're looking pretty good. Yes, the ALS is a challenge. I don't think I've been shy about that for, let's see now. I came here 18 months ago, and I think for 18 months I've been saying that the ALS is a challenge at the level of call volume that you have. Now, I will say, I think we sometimes lose sight of the fact that the career folks who would run an ALS service are firefighter/paramedics. And there is value in having career firefighters on staff during the day to roll the equipment. The world has changed. And we will have to have a conversation with the community if the initial numbers with respect to fully deploying ALS continue to be what I've thought they were all along, which is something on the 250 plus or minus range. We'll have to have that conversation.
Mr. Chairman, one thing, if I might, before I'll let the administrator go here. I noticed you mentioned this last night, and I was just wondering if you've gotten anywhere with any resolution on the state land aspect on the cherry sheet, the knockdown of the 30,000 from 110 to 80, if there was any.
I don't, but I did suggest one of the things that we've done on my watch, which budget cycle-wise, this is only the second one, but baked into the process is I encourage the select boards to invite the delegation in around this time of the year. And what that does is it lets the delegation kind of tub thump a little bit and take some credit for what they got done in the last legislative season and tee themselves up for the next election, and lets them kind of warn the communities of what the state can't do for them in the coming year. But it also lets the select board ask some pointed questions. On the cherry sheet, we noticed that. Why? Or, geez, the Fernald School's been sitting there for a long time. We've talked with DCAM. They can't even think about disposing of the land until they do a reuse study. They can't even give us a number of what that would cost so we can ask you to try to get that money into the budget. Is that something you could help us with? So we do go out to all the departments, see what questions they have, bring it down to a couple, and then we provide those to the select board for their consideration. What the individual members of my board that I work for do with those suggestions is up to the individual members of the board that I work for.
Thank you.
All right.
There was one question that Carter had asked me regarding what we submitted for our budget for next year. And it's the expense for 3 members to attend the MMA annual meeting.
MMAQ.
I think I had a typo in that. I think it was supposed to be MMA, and I couldn't explain what that stood for. What is the MMA?
Massachusetts Municipal Association.
Okay, so that was
Workshop
just a typo?
Yeah.
Yeah, that they just had.
Yep. Okay. Easy enough. I didn't have any other real questions on it. I did speak to your chairman and tell him I understood the need to build the reserve up a touch, but that, like the snow and ice, is not gonna be a instant leap and gonna be always a challenge. We did reach out to some other communities to see if they had formal policies besides the Carter's method, and it turns out that they don't. We've only found 2 so far that have any sort of formal policy, and interestingly, one of them, in fact, was the target number that I've usually picked. So, if you do run across some that are, ones that we found were Brookline and Lunenburg. So if you do have some that you run across, please circle them over to us if you would, please.
All right. I believe that is it.
All set?
Thank you for coming.
You're
Thank you.
quite welcome.
All right. Let's see. All right. Next item are the minutes from January 3rd.
Okay, make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
Oh, I must have snowed.
I'll second.
Anyone have any corrections or changes or issues? All right. Seeing none. Paul?
Yes.
Will?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Since I was absent, I will say I abstain. All right. For the VADAR training, and since we had it, it was day before 2 days before the last meeting was gonna be, yeah, somewhere around there, anyways. The last meeting we didn't have, and so it's been a couple of weeks. Myself and Paul and Bob and Julie went. It was interesting. I guess we got the detail that we kind of asked for. We did get we got a username, we got a password. we had a temp password, and then we agreed to a hard password for the committee. We discussed the timeframe is, and one at a time can get on, and if somebody's on and you get on, you will essentially bump them off. He showed us some things, if there was a, it's not called an outline, but if somebody comes up with a format, a template, thank you. There's a little WD I need. If that format, for instance, the old format for the budget versus actual, if it is saved and it's up there, you can take that, you can still use it, you can save it to a memory stick, you can save it. He suggested saving it to the cloud. Me being a suspect, a little untrustworthy little guy, I don't even trust myself. I said, come on, we put it on a memory stick and you save it to your screen, you can do all of that. So, and I told him, I said, well, because if you put it in the cloud, you know, that can get lost. And if you trust the template will be there, somebody has put it there, it may not be there the next time you go, because, and that question, I believe, was asked by one or all of us. Yeah, it can happen, so he suggested you put it in the cloud, so you can always access it from anywhere. And he did give a demonstration, he had a computer and he had it projected on a screen, and he did a query for something, I think it was something we asked for, and it was a matter of a few minutes. I mean, it wasn't, a couple minutes, he had this thing on the screen, in an Excel format. And he, that was one of the things I believe he said you could do, you could put it in any, format, any way you want, but Excel is a quick and easy thing. And he showed it to us, and I said, really? It's that quick? He goes, yeah, it's just a couple of minutes. Once you go in there and like, as Paul found out, I think he was the first one who actually went in there. And it takes a little bit of getting used to, he said, but once you get familiar with it, and then he showed us some things, he says it's really quick. So, wow. And he demonstrated generating a few queries we asked about. And you can do like a month, you can do 6 months, any time period you want, you can do a year. But his advice, as I recall, was you go in there and you play with it and figure it out. You have to download Centrix and then get in that way.
Citrix.
But, and like I said, as Paul and I emailed some of the reports that he has come up with and went looking at. I called, one was snow and ice and one was group insurance, because he had to call Kelly for a sub-account number. Because I gave him the one off the old, the end of the year budget versus actual. But he called up and he found it, and it's right there listed, so.
It was the 9/11 account. I believe what they did do was combine benefits as well as health insurance into that same account. So the detail reports, and what I sent out after you forwarded reports today, were updated reports generated as of today, because when I ran them a couple of weeks ago, it didn't have the, I think it was only through November. I don't think the December postings had been complete yet, so I ran it again today to get the most up-to-date postings. The detail includes the actual POs. So, so I ran it a couple of different formats. It does give you some flexibility. You can do it kind of at a summary level, basically the type of report that we get on a monthly basis that shows what the budget versus actual is. And it breaks it down by department, by subcategory, if you will. But what I sent out as the reports was specifically for snow and ice and for the retirement and health insurance accounts.
And those are the two that were kind of stuck. They grouped
Yeah,
them
health
together.
insurance and benefits were combined together into a single account. But again, you could see the detail in the POs to distinguish, you know, between the two. As far as the application itself, what I handed out and what I have for the rest of the members are the instructions that we received from the trainer, how to install the Citrix receiver application. That's the actual interface, if you will, that you generate the reports off the VADAR system. And how you set up cloud access to the VADAR cloud. I'll offer to help anybody if you want to, you know, well, if you want to take a look at the instructions when you get some time, we can maybe, you know, walk through it over the phone or whatever, and I can make sure that you're getting set up with access on your computer. And we can walk through some of the standard reports. But what I've seen so far, it's fairly intuitive. It has a number of standard reports that, you know, will meet most of our purposes, as far as I can see, and we do have the detail. It is available. It is not broken down, like Carter said, you know, sub-accounts for every single type of supply expense, or, but it does roll out according to the categories that are in the budget book. So, other than that, it's, there's the export process, how you, once you've generated a report, you can view it instantly, or you can export it. And as Jeff said, they recommended that we export it to the VADAR cloud. There's a central repository, if you will, for all of the reports that are generated. I've done them in Excel format. I include the formatting that comes from the VADAR system, or the Citrix application, and store them in the cloud. I'm trying to come up with a standard naming convention, file naming convention, so it's easy to understand, you know, what the report is, and any specifics, you know, like it was just snow and ice and retirement and benefits accounts, that sort of thing. I've tried to put that in the file name, so that it's, and the date that it was generated. So, and those are available there once you get into the system. If you go to the VADAR cloud, you can see those reports. Or you can just simply run and view any kind of report that you want to see with, you know, whatever level of detail, and it gives you some flexibility on how you want to sort it and summarize the data. So, I mean, I would suggest that what we do is look at the monthly report, see where we see, you know, see wherever we have questions. We can do it, as you said, we could do it right here, generate a report, and look at the details to explain, you know, if we see a potential variance or anything that seems out of line. We have instant access to find that level of detailed information that should answer the question.
One question that I had, and it pertains to how we're gonna do this. Do we have access to like that screen from our computers?
No,
No.
there's been problems with that screen.
Yeah, even when,
Since it's been
even when
installed.
Steve, even when Steve Castle was here, like last year when we did joint budget meetings, we were using it, and it was, I remember he had to mess with it. It was problem with the cord, problem, I don't know if these, I wish he was here, if he had fixed it up, if they had fixed it or changed it or whatever, but.
Depends on the access to your PC, number one. It takes a special interface if you don't have the updated interface. Number two is when it goes on the screen, it's so small, it's hard to read to begin with. And there was no way to enlarge it.
I've just purchased a little portable projector. I haven't, I needed to get a cable in order to connect my laptop to it, so I don't know. And it's not a, very expensive one, so I don't know how,
I
I
think,
mean, certainly we could try it, I could bring it in and see if it, if
yeah, I
it
think
helps.
Julie has one also. She brought it at one meeting,
Right,
and I think we used it on this screen or.
right, I think we
something
did, yeah, she
And
used
it
her
wasn't-
laptop
yeah.
and her
It
projector,
wasn't,
so.
it wasn't too bad. But I remember, I know that screen, the several meetings that I've been to that they've tried to use it. Like the elementary school building committee meetings, they bring their own little projector and they put everything up on
Yeah.
that screen because I know they've tried to use that and it's been small or it hasn't been, if you've got a laptop or a computer that's, I don't know, a couple years old or whatever, then
You need a special
you
cable
don't have
for it.
stuff installed in it, and like I said, Steve Castle has been here, and, I mean, he knows the stuff pretty
Yeah.
good, and he's
So that's
tracked
dated
down the
and-
cable, and who messed with this, and I know they've had problems with it.
Okay.
So I think a little projector on that screen works.
Okay.
Yeah,
works
because
good.
I was just thinking, I mean, it'd be great, we can generate our own paper copies and so forth, but then if we have questions, the only, benefit is we're having a discussion here, is if we have something that we can search and show live, rather than going and printing new copies every time we,
Right, right.
Yeah.
that just seemed like a waste, so I was just wondering how we were gonna do it.
And looking at those reports, my thing is that there's too much detail. You'd only want that type of detail if there was an issue within a category.
Right,
And my contention is that they collapsed the categories down to this, because we had asked too many questions, and I don't know if it's, I think the trainer basically said that you can end up going, if you look at the electronic version of the budget, it breaks it down even more than that. There was sub numbers on the one that I received a while back. If you look back, I think back in December, beginning of January, he sent us that electronically. I have a copy, I looked at that, and that's different than what you have in that book.
That's why I
That's
wanna
all
ask
I'm
if
gonna
we
end
were
up saying about that. I
get a
just,
hard copy of
Because,
that.
I mean, and I didn't mean to speak out of turn if I did, but it was my understanding, and I hope both of you heard the same thing, that when we asked Ted about that he did say, yes.
I think he did,
but-
he went up there and did a query and showed it. if I recall.
Something very similar using, what,
Some
Chelmsford or
town-
somebody's.
Yeah, some other town, not Templeton, but he used
Right.
another town, where he had been trained or something, he came up and,
well, he did say, it's however it's coded, however we enter it into the different account level, the level of detail that they post the records
Yeah.
is what's available, so,
but I remember he did do some queries in
yeah.
a couple of minutes, and of course, I believe that's how good you get, at using it, it's, all the information in the world can be there, but if you don't know how to find it, or, go, where to go, or how to do it, so you have to get in there and play, and I haven't gone in and played with it as much as I had wanted for a bunch of reasons, but.
Well, if we can do a working session in which we do exactly that, we take a look at the monthly, budget versus actual, come up with a list of questions, let's sit here with the projector and, see if we can, get the answers to those specific questions, okay? Again, some of it may be down to the PO level, if we're saying, hey, as the highway department exceeded their, their supplies budget by, 20% year-to-date.
I got it written down, I know it's, whatever it is. Did we email the password out?
I did not, because of, I didn't, or maybe I did, but it's on the sheet that you've just received.
Is it, yeah,
I didn't think that was good, good security,
yeah.
emailing out passwords, so.
You mean somebody might intercept my email?
Yeah, Comcast. Yeah.
I ain't worried about Comcast so much, it's that Microsoft is one.
Yeah.
I know they look at your stuff. We were just talking about that, to get off the subject too much, but they were talking about that this morning on the, World ABC News from 3 to 2 to 4, whatever it is, about, Google Home.
Listening all the time.
No, well, yeah, I guess there's a couple instances where it's happened, and, I was over Will and Carol's house, and they got it, and it is pretty cool, and it's useful as heck, but, it's funny, they were talking about it, yeah, Google Home, they found these couple issues like this or that, thing, so I was like, it's always a downside, the robots are coming, they're coming. Hopefully they'll be in the ground by the time
Privacy is a thing of the
by the time they
past.
walk in the building, but. So, yeah, that's the biggest thing about our access is we, actually gotta get in there and do something with it.
So, I guess, I'll make a motion then that we spend a certain amount of time at our next meeting to do a working session on it. So if we can come prepared with any questions on the budget versus actual, and
And that one, did everybody get, the copy of the one Kelly sent, it came yesterday?
yeah, yesterday, I think it was.
I glanced at it and it looked like everybody's email was there, but it's still coming to my Comcast, it ain't going to the email address that I gave. It's just, and I've asked for a correction 3 times, but, and it did go to the advisory committee, Templeton 1, so. Okay, let me make a note to myself. Next agenda, X time. VVA, and since the VVA, the latest one came out, and it got sent to us yesterday, put that on there, and we'll spend, I'll keep the agenda thing down. For that. So, are we all set on that one?
Well, I've just made a motion, so,
Oh, yeah. I'm
any
sorry.
second?
Second.
Yeah, you gotta keep me straight.
To set
For
aside
X
time
amount
at
of
the
time
next-
for VADAR. Yeah, I wrote a note to myself and forgot about it, the same word. Okay, motion second, any discussion? Okay. Paul?
Yes.
Will?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
And yes. I will email. All members. Okay, VVA, question.
Between now and then, I'll find out how my projector is working, and I'll bring that, but,
Yeah,
if I have a problem with it, I'll email Julie and ask her if she can bring
yeah,
hers.
like I said, I haven't talked with her, so I, in one meeting somewhere I was gonna go to, she wasn't feeling good either, so, like I said, school, she could be, the flu stuff is all I can think of. Okay, so got that done. We all set on VADAR? We will tackle that. Capital planning updates, Mr. Bob. Has been any
Okay.
happenings?
Yeah, couple of interesting things with the capital planning. I mean, we have, we have been, in the last 2 meetings, we've had 5 people show up. We're seemingly getting a person that was on the committee before back, it appears. We've had a lot of good discussions and a lot of good input from the departments. We're right now in the process of narrowing down a a lot of the items that were brought to us. I just spent the day today, most of it, emailing and making phone calls to get some, let's say, final information, to help us make our decisions. But we've got some real challenges, and I'll just mention a couple of them that, I think, you know, we need to think of as a town and as a board, as a committee. You know, the police station, that's coming back around again. Most of our items, to be honest, are safety related, and that's kind of what we're looking at, is, you know, safety first. Because, you know, we know money's tight. So the police station's coming back around. We have the 1987 fire truck. You know, so it's 31 years old. The average useful life on those, I guess, is listed at 20 years. So we're, you know, half again beyond that, running into trouble. We have, there's multiple issues around the town hall, that are, you know, certain things that are required by the state and by this and by that. Don't know where I wanna go as far as the, like I said, basically, we're focused on safety, cause we know the money's probably gonna be tight, but we don't have any idea on what funds are gonna be available.
With regards
Yeah.
to the police station, is
Yeah.
that having to come around again because of, to ask for more money? Or, because that was just on last year's annual town meeting for, what, the third time?
$975,000.
Second time?
Yeah.
It was in it was last
Yeah.
year, 2017, it was in there, to re-vote it. Yeah, cause I think our recommendation was to, we wanted to let the people know that it was gonna be a multi-year, borrowing, rather than what was stated in the summary back in 15.
Right, it was initially stated, to my recollection, that it was gonna be a 2-year funding, debt exclusion, and then, it was gonna be a USDA loan at the $975,000 mark. Then the quotes came in at $2,133,000. And that put the hold on the whole kit and caboodle. Now, there's questions around that, you know, I think are gonna be answered, by the chief, cause he does plan on, as far as I know, does plan on bringing that back before the, town meeting in May. He stated some timeline to, you know, start building in June. If that happens, good luck, I guess, on getting all this stuff together. They plan on going out to bid prior to the town meeting so that they actually have an update, and it's my understanding that now, Fontaine Brothers, who are building the school, has an interest in potentially bidding on this, so when they go out to new bids, they might actually bid on it this time,
There's
since
no
they're.
backdoor politics going on there, is there?
You know, I don't guard the back door, I'm just, you know,
I know,
sitting here
you just,
passing on the information. You know, myself on that, I have my own personal concerns, you know, and if you look at the layout, it was designed to fit into the nostalgic Templeton, you know, environment, and then that's all changing. So whether or not, you know, there's gonna be an adaptation to the plan, a change to the plan, I don't know. I guess, you know.
cause I thought last year when they redid it was not only because of the wording, but I thought they were gonna shove it, or presented to capital planning committee, cause I believe in 15 it didn't go, because there was no committee to recommend or anything on it, same
Nope.
as the school.
Yeah, there was no quorum. And that's the case, and it's my understanding, I questioned the chief today, there's a couple items, like, you know, a boiler's on the agenda, but if, you know, they build a new one, you know, the boiler's included in the new build. I just wanted to clarify that it wasn't removed. And, you know, he explained to me, was telling me that, you know, his concern is that if we don't do this now, based on the shape of the building, the condition that the building's in, we're gonna end up spending $200,000 to bring the building up to just usable, you know, at present. So, I guess we'll see that in part of his presentation when that comes around.
Yes, the scare tactic presentation.
Yeah.
So,
You know, I think if you look at the capital plan the way it is now, and it's not complete because we don't have all the assets in it, which we have, over the past week, we've ended up, getting a complete listing, as far as we know, a complete listing of the, property in town, raw land and buildings. I ended up getting a list from Alan of the 49 vehicles that are listed on the mechanic sheet for the town, including the sewer, but not excluding the fire. So we'll go about incorporating those. There was a check on those vehicles. I guess 48 of them were actually listed on the capital plan in some form or fashion. But if, you know, like, looking at the capital plan right now as it sits today, I believe if I'm not, it's not on that one, if I'm not mistaken, with what we have on there, our average expenditure, you know, over, I think, an average of like 20 years, it still bases out at like $590,000. You know, just looking at the capital plan, when their items are requested to replace, their, you know, useful life and so forth. You know, in our goal is to try and trim that number and, find a better way of doing things. And on a positive note, I think we might have found you know, a way around today that, you know, to get more into understanding that it's town equipment rather than this department's equipment, that department's equipment, and so forth. I think that, thinking is kind of catching on a little bit.
that it's a town item and it doesn't belong to you or you.
Right,
It's-
because we're, you know, we have an issue right now, the emergency management doesn't have a vehicle. You know, so they've been towing around the emergency management equipment with their personal vehicles. You know, and that's really a liability for the town, it's a problem, you know, all the way around, so, it looks like we might have, a solution with one of the 1-tons from the DPW being made available, to the emergency management for that purpose. You know, we'll see. But, you know, progress. The list is getting bigger, you know, and, we need, as, to the viewers out there, we still need, another citizen on the committee.
Oh, you did get one.
Well, we believe we did. I believe Charlie has rejoined, or is.
He was on planning board.
Like I said,
Well, what's really
Finding out.
needed, and it was
Yeah.
pointed out back in 13, 14, and 15, when I was on, is an asset management system.
no, yeah.
If you have an asset management system and you tag everything, you can actually divide it into departments, but it's all still towns, but you know where it's actually located, per se.
Oh, yeah. There's no question that we do, and we don't have any such beast like that now. I mean, just finding, you know, just verifying what we have for land, what we have for cars, what we have, you know, and, is a, you know, large task for a volunteer audience, you know, or volunteer participants.
Because it's really, honestly and truly, since that bylaw came into place and the capital planning committee and all of this, the foundation was never really correctly done. And it's just been floundering, and it's been added on, and it's just, you know, well, let's make a list. And, you know, it's been piecemeal. And it takes somebody, a volunteer, it takes somebody to do it, and take your own time,
Yeah.
whenever, and come up with an outline or something, and then to bring it to the committee, and then they didn't have a quorum. My thing for capital planning would be if you could get the committee list on the town website updated. Shows Will Spring and Lori Mattson still on it,
And Charlie,
and Charles Carroll.
and Doug.
And the only
Yeah.
one still on there is Doug.
I've emailed on that specific thing on multiple occasions, and I think that was kind of referenced in a recent Board of Selectmen meeting regarding, you know, how the future of the website will be managed and utilized. You know,
I know, but it's just, it's,
pet peeves.
well, you try to go see who's on a committee to see, you know, blah, 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 and you can't find the school building committee, you can't find this committee, you can't find that committee.
And I've come up here, you know, hoping to do something similar to that. I came up here, I paid for a list of all the committee members, you know, in the committee list, and the members on those lists. And most of them, I mean, you know, are the same. Now, I think there's 6 members listed on capital planning, actually, on that. And it's Will and Julie and, you know, who haven't been on it for a long time. And a lot of our committees are just like that. And it's impossible to find information on our town website.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
but, so,
Typically, asset management is done by your finance team. Accounting, treasurer, collector would probably be the place, but in business, it's usually within the accounting function. And it's easy to generate a report for a particular, in this particular case, department as to what they're supposed to have. And it's a quick list where that department personnel can go to find those. They can end up saying, okay, I got all these, and goes around, checks, and says, yes, he has 25 items and he finds only 24. There's an issue there. Where's number 25? I mean, that could have been transferred or whatever, and there should be a document created to take and transfer that, or it was, in some cases, if it's, depending on what type of equipment it is, it's expended and scrapped. Not that difficult of a system.
No, but it has to start somewhere. And that's the, you know,
Well,
I
we
think
had-
what has,
In 2015, there was a list generated, and that was given to the chairman of the capital planning by the coordinator.
before my time, don't know. And all I can say is we have a list, you know, but I've, you know, myself personally, I've asked the administrator, 2 weeks ago, even an email, if there were, do we have, as a town, anywhere, lists that, you know, could assist in this process from, you know, insurers, the different departments, anything, and as a combined, complete list, the answer that I got was no. The answer that I got was you know, somebody's gonna have to actually compile it, because there isn't one. So,
Well, the best way to compile it is you actually number the items, and that way you keep track
Sure.
of that item with a number. If you just create a list, and it's a vehicle, VIN per se, or whatever, that's a little harder that they could track than a number on it. Could be number 48 is vehicle such and such.
Yeah.
It's easy to go see what, you go up to a vehicle and you see this tag on it, says 48. You got all the rest of the information there.
Right.
I mean, that's basically how it's done, per se.
I think that's what Caplis was talking about when he was saying about grabbing a couple high school kids and going around and doing just that. He said tagged, you know, as far as tagging equipment that's owned by the town. I don't know to what level, to what degree.
It can be paper tags, because paper
But,
tags come off
you
easy.
know, like I said, don't know.
In
But
fact-
it's,
In fact, in this particular case, you actually have a desk in that selectman's office, that's a piece of capital. They spent $3,000 for the desk. Remember that, Jeff?
They spent $3,000 for the three.
That was a big to-do in its day.
End of the year, money left in the expense account was buy a new desk.
they thought they were a
We have the
school?
money. Hey,
Yeah, I mean, we're trying,
okay,
and that's about all I got.
all right.
Good luck.
Yeah, thank you. I really.
I'm
I
serious
know, I know
about
you
that.
are. I know you are, Will. That's why I said thank you. Because it's,
I've been there. It's better than it was, but it's certainly not where it should be.
All right.
not even close.
The next item is our report and recommendations to the annual town meeting as far as how we format it and the content. And it's not the first time we've had this, and this is not the example that I passed out to everybody, is one that I found. I got another stack of them, and they run the gamut from, there's some that are a few pages and there's some that are very detailed, I mean, binder thick and heavy. The one that struck me that I gave was kind of the format. And that on the front page, it gives a synopsis about the town meeting being held. Why is the meeting called? And it instructs people or suggests that they read it and consider the articles carefully. And of course, you have to show up for, to do that. I mean, you can read the articles, but to have any input on them, you have to show up, which is probably more important. It lists the advisory committee members. It gives a little thing on the procedure, which I think is important. Sometimes I think people don't realize what they can or can't do at town meeting. And the other thing that I liked about this is they not only give a recommendation for or against, or no action, but, and for this committee, we're 7-member makeup. This one is 3, 6, a 9-member. But if we have 4 members that vote to recommend for, and we have 3 that recommend against, for example, if the police station comes back and, we have 3 members that recommend no, I think, and I mentioned this in what the advisory committee was doing and our goals and what we've been working on and what our thought process kind of is, at the all-committee meeting. This has not only a recommendation, explanation, we recommend for, and then it gives reasons why, but it gives they call it a minority report. And that's maybe not that important for a 6-1 vote, 6 yes, 1 no. But if it's a 4-3, and it's something big, like say the police station, I think the townspeople deserve to hear, well, why does almost half the committee think we shouldn't do this? There was a question raised by a selectman that they thought, oh, that would be too confusing and this and that. I don't think it could be any more confusing than the summaries and the motions. And we've already seen that that's happened.
Yep.
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
stirring my
Oh,
coffee.
Yeah.
And again, this is just one, and I've been, unfortunately, I've been, well, kind of in a good way, but bad for my committee duties. I've been busy. I'm gonna be busy again tonight, maybe, with snow. But I want to put together like an outline or format to kind of look at. We don't have to copy this one per se. Like I said, the thing that struck me was the outline of the front page announcing the special town meeting and this and that. But it was the minority report. It's more than just a simple yes or no recommendation. And probably some would rather just keep it simple to yes or no. So it's like the questions we ask. They would rather we not ask them sometimes, I think. So I was hoping for all or most people here at the committee, but we haven't met since January 3rd. So this is something, and it's not any particular town, it's just the format. I was looking through different ones. I'll bring some more examples at the next meeting. I want to try to come up with some kind of format and a consensus of how we can do this. And again, this year, we don't have money in the budget, so that'll get taken care of. But it's just something I wanted to bring before the committee and kick it around. Do we wanna, do something more than how we've done it and we have given some explanations. Like last year, our recommendation included, and it was a little dicey getting the moderator to let us say more than a recommendation, but it's written in the record that we wanted to reiterate to the townspeople that was gonna be, multi-year funding. It's different than, I think we try to enlighten the fact, to project the fact that the summary, if you recall, the summary for the first time go around was not what you voted for, and it's not the way the motion read. And it's in bold, and it's 3 or 4 lines but the committee, I remember we issued, we wanted to ensure that the people advised the townspeople that it was gonna be, a multi-year funding thing if it went this way, rather than just, going by what, say, the summary said, because I think that confuses people more than anything. They read the summary and they think, well, that's what they're voting, and they don't. I think there's a disconnect of the summary, and then they get to the motion, and they hear the motion, and it's like they remember the summary, and they don't get to jog the difference, and they vote yes, and then later on, you try to tell them, no, that's not what you voted on. You voted on this. Oh, no, it said, no, the motion didn't say that. So, my feeling is, anything that we can do to provide more information to the people who decide to take the time and show up, the better. No, I'm not the first chair to try this. I'm not the first member of this committee to suggest this. The trick is to make it happen and to get it done, and usually in a short period of time. By the time we get the final warrant and everything and kick it around and look at it, it takes time, unfortunately. The budget is the biggest thing, and I don't know if that's by design or what, but as I stated at the all committee that me and Bob were at, it'll be a work in progress if it happens. It may not be, finalized this year. If we made something up, it'd probably change the following year, because we would have a little more time, we would have experience, and maybe we will have the budget, the expense money to get it done, print it up a little earlier, a little better, or what have you. The cost is the cost, and I'd bear that. I just feel that strongly about it, and it's really not that much. It's just the timing thing and coming up with an outline of how we would write it up, present it. Again, I know it's a time crunch. It'll be a time crunch again this year. It seems like it's like that. Because the budget, even though we get it a little earlier, it's still at the last minute. You know, if you have till April this date, it's almost, you get it almost on that date, and town meeting is, you know, right around the corner. When we get talking about the budget, it takes, and we've been here to midnight, 10, 11 o'clock, midnight, you know, late nights.
Can I say this about last year? This administrator didn't allow us to put anything other than a yes or no recommendation. The previous year, we ended up creating our own document and putting it out so people could end up getting it and coming into the meeting. It did have that level of detail for each article. It had some verbiage. The year before, we had the same thing because Gordon Moore was at that particular time, and I sat with him, and we both, with him writing it up, it was put on to the actual warrant. It was allowed by that administrator. That's not this administrator, but the one previously. So the one previously allowed us to put our recommendation and some verbiage on it. The following year, we weren't allowed to do that, so we ended up creating our own document and just putting the article number, a little bit of what the article was, and the recommendation and some verbiage. That created some controversy. I don't know why, because it's been done other places. And last year, we weren't allowed to put anything other than a yes or no. If you wanted to end up having any discussion at all, it was reluctantly done by the moderator to allow us to end up giving a verbal recommendation. We should have probably had created a slide for each of them and put it up.
In the last special meeting we just had, it's like just yes or no.
Yep.
We had a thing that we didn't have information when we had the pre-town, and we voted we would do this at the meeting.
Yep.
When I asked, and it said, this is what we want to do, nope, just yes or no. Well, okay.
And by the way, you are allowed to take in and do a query at town meeting. It's just that your management team that runs the special town or the annual did not allow it.
And pushed back.
I mean, I believe he was pressured because, as far as his sense of employment, he does work for the town, even though he is moderator.
So that'll be the trick, well, the real trick is the timing thing, and the format. And if we decide that we do a recommendation and explain why we're why we're recommending for what this article will mean. And then, like I said, if 6-1, it really doesn't need a dissenting opinion, but my more thought is like, if you're 4-3, even 6-2, but, 5-2, but if you're 4-3, and if it's something important, big, all articles, I guess, are important, but if it's a major, like, say the funding of the police station, or something that's gonna change something, and it's 4-3, I think the people deserve to hear, well, why do you three,
That's correct.
No.
vote? What do you all see? Are you seeing something? Do you have, is it just, you don't want this personally, or do you have some reasons that you see
We
that,
had,
that you don't think we should do this?
we had some minority folks that voted that, and I told them that they could end up giving us some verbiage, we would put it on, or speak at the meeting. They chose not to do that and just lead the vote as to what it was. You can't end up
Yeah, you can't force
You
anybody to
can't force
do
anybody
it.
to end up doing that.
But
Another document you can look at is, this goes back, it was written for Stowe. It's within their, basically, their guidelines for the operation for, and I believe about 6 months or so, I passed that one out to folks. It was the operating of the actual advisory, is to come up with a document that spells out how this body should work. Because it's not like, I mean, it's not like we're all gonna be here forever. You have a document that you can hand off to folks to see what the general guidelines are, along with the Association of Town Finance. The other one I had given was, about 3 months ago, was from Wellesley. It had the roles and responsibilities, not as encompassing as the one from Stowe. Stowe had how you end up doing for the articles. They gave an example of yes and no and all this good stuff in it. So they're out there.
Just as a word or my opinion here, 'cause I have one. I absolutely like the, let's say, writing out the reasons for the no answer. Because I think we are, above anything else, an advisory committee, and I think advice comes in both positive and negative forms. So if, you know, like you said, like if there's a 4-3 vote, you know, I mean, there's a large enough chunk of people that have looked at all the detail and think that it's not good for the town, that, you know, I think that should be brought before the town at the meeting. I think it's almost negligent to not bring that before them, because they're just going off of this sheet of paper, most of them. They don't have any background information, or very limited background information, so a lot of them are relying on us to have looked at that background information, and, you know, with, let's say, more than the idea of voting yes or no, with the idea of how it's gonna affect the taxpayer, how it's gonna affect the town, how it's gonna affect, you know, budgets and so on. So I do, I think that is a very good point, something that we need. And I was one of the ones that, I think that whichever one of those meetings was one of the frustrated people that said we should just remove the summaries, if they're not, if we can't rely on them.
Right.
You know, and I feel that way to this day. I think that's almost fraud, in my mind.
I don't know if it was that annual or the special last.
There's two things that stand in our way here. Let me explain them. The fact that your administrator has limited you to what you have. To make and I agree with making a separate document like we did a couple of years back. If you do that and you create that separate document, which you can already hear the selectmen have done some pushback from what I hear, the grumblings going on. They want to take and see what you're doing. They can read it just like everybody else as far as I'm concerned, number one. Number two, the other thing is, if you put that document out, if you don't, and you mail it, but you actually have some copies at the meeting, whether it be a special or annual, you need to take and end up passing that by the moderator. Now, there's two trends of thought here. He ends up likes to control what's out there. Does he have the ability to do that? That's a bone of contention. My understanding is that you can't hand out anything within the meeting, but you can have it outside the meeting. You can hand out anything, and he has no say in what's going out there. That might be a fight between the moderator and this committee as to if we don't get the approval prior to, and the same thing with the selectmen. So I'm trying to let you know that we have, and I agree that we need to do that like we did a couple of years ago, but the hurdles are there for us to take and end up as a committee, try to work those. It is what it is, and you might as well know what you're up against. And if those people push back again, no matter which group, it is what it is.
Well, there's the Secretary of State who has a lot to say on what can and can't happen at a town meeting, as far as the legality stuff. So, but moderator can't go out in the hallway before he can't tell you to be in the building, or you gotta leave the building until you're in. He can't tell you to be quiet, no talking out here, until you get into town meeting. That's where the moderator has authority.
Because the year that we put him out there, somebody I don't know if it was the selectman, I don't really care. Somebody pushed back and he said, it has to be passed by me, and it says, well, they're out there. And that was at a special town meeting. Besides, there was a lot of controversy there.
I know who did that.
Yeah, there was a lot of controversy there, and he said, yeah, it's out there, it can stay. But he says, for next time, you better ask me. And I didn't want to get into a confrontation with him. It's his meeting to run inside, but what happens outside that meeting, before you come in, that's allowable.
It was a Mr. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. She got that one.
Oh, yeah.
Smart gal you got there. Okay. So as I said, the trick will be the timing of getting it
I would
out.
say that once the warrant is drafted, per se, even if it's the first draft,
We can pick a lot of the articles. that
there is
probably
some that you can already
know it's gonna
begin
stay.
to formulate stuff. As the process goes along, you may end up having to, as things change, is to take and end up doing those at a later date, which gets you down to maybe out of the 30 articles, you only have to take and deal with 10 in the smaller time frame than the whole entire 30 articles or whatever.
So. All right. The next item is just, I'm just advising the committee that one way or another, I ended up, I got myself on the Narragansett School District Reorganization Advisory Committee. I put it on the agenda because I got an email and it was discussing, they were trying to pick a day to have it, and one of the days was Tuesday. But most of the majority of the members picked, it's happening tomorrow, 5 or 5:30, at the central office. Myself, there's selectman, superintendent, school committee member, there's a bunch of people. So if you're interested, and what I think we're gonna do tomorrow is, the next meeting, pick another meeting date that's agreeable with most people. Lay the foundation of what we're gonna try to accomplish and discuss. And I will take notes and inform you all of what goes on and what becomes of this. I think one of the big things was, or at least had been put out when they formed the committee, was the fifth graders of Phillipston that are in the, over there at the Narragansett, in the junior high, wherever they're at. When they get to new elementary school, they wanna take the fifth graders out of there and put them in Templeton Center. Well, the fifth graders from Phillipston have to go back to the Phillipston school because it's not a regional project. And there's a bunch of different stuff, I guess. This is, something that was put together by the, superintendent. So, I will be at that meeting. I'll take notes and let everybody know, probably before our next meeting, in some way, form, or fashion, of, what happens, what's the workings, and what's the goings-on, the goals, whatever that we decided we're gonna do over there. So like I said, when I did the agenda on, Saturday, Sunday, I was anticipating, I know we had a choice of this day, or that day, and if it was Tuesday, I wanted to be able to discuss, you know, give you an update on what you do. But it's not till Thursday, so, that is that.
Can I make one recommendation to our representative?
No. I don't play well with others, I don't take advice.
No, there's nothing to do with that. If you look at the large amount of communities that have the school budget in December, January, and February timeframe, rather than as late as they do it in this community, that should be in the district agreement. If you look at the document that I told you about in Stowe, it's actually in there that their budget should be available to the town and to this committee on February 15th. To take and end up having that budget come that late presents a problem to this committee as well as the selectmen. That they can end up creating the budget, and you hear them saying, well, we can't do it because they have this. Well, it's time to push back and tell the school that they need to take and have the budget done earlier.
I think it's one of those things, sort of like the warrant getting to this advisory committee. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe there's a time frame, a deadline date by law when they have up to, and I think that is why it comes as late as it does. It could come earlier, but I'm almost 100%, it's in chapter 70, 71? Chapter 70, I think. The Mass General Law that guides the schools, districts and stuff, I believe there's a deadline date in there. It has to be done by this date.
Yep.
And I think that is the reason for, you tell me I got till, the
They're
31st.
gonna push it off to that deadline
You
date
can wait till the
when they could
31st
end up
and there's
doing
not
it
even
earlier.
much you can do. You could do it earlier, but I believe that's, that's the
Now-
procedure that the school.
Now, I
committee
don't wanna
follows.
hear that we've got a district school versus some other school, they can end up doing it. Stowe has the Shoba. That's a district school. If the district school can end up doing it and the Shoba, why can't this community? I mean, that's only one example. I'm sure that there's others. So, I mean, that to me would be something that we should end up looking at. I don't know what else would be in there, but that would be one thing that, to take and help both Phillipston and Templeton finance committees and the selectmen do their job better. They have that ability to take and start that process earlier.
Because, the governor's budget is out and, the initial cherry sheet is out, as town administrator said, so, and the school numbers are in there. The amount of money they increased for chaps. Now, yeah, that can change. It usually, that stuff usually doesn't go down a whole lot. Between the House and the Senate, they're usually pretty kinda tight. They argue with the governor sometimes, but anyway, so that committee meeting is tomorrow. If it's not going, I'll be there. It's, like I said, it's at the district office. I should know that's why I got one of them little electronic thingies. It's 5:30, at the district office. All right. The next item is, the budget process, and, as the administrator said, it's gonna be in February when we have these joint meetings and we get, whether we get a paper copy or if it's all gonna be electronic this year. That's where we'll have to defend our budget. As I already said, we're not gonna get the 80,000, even though my point, and I believe I emailed everybody that you have 300-something thousand free cash, working capital, you could fund it with that. And if you don't spend all of it, it would revert back to free cash, but it also would be available to use for the, for the next budget. So the funding is there unless you have plans for that 300-something thousand that you set aside as working capital, which, from the sounds of watching the last couple selectmen's meetings, they probably gonna have to use that monies. Because we'd be spending more than we have.
Then some.
Well, as you heard at the workshop, if you listen to the workshop, $300,000 to $350,000 is a bone of contention that they're looking at. There was a lot of discussion about an override, and I'm concerned that you do that, plus the fact that you have a police station that's gonna have to go back, and you've already got to the point. And what surprised me on that workshop, and this is part of the budget process, is that, and I'm still trying to figure out how the administrator presented this and came up with his conclusion. He said that the amount of money that we're gonna borrow, we would be paying back is about $1.5 million. But because this coming off and that coming off, it would only increase the tax rate by $1. He's using some different type of math.
You mean like the $1.74 for the school?
Yep.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's a stretch in that respect also.
Okay.
My thing too on this whole budget process, and not that I don't think it's more efficient to have it with the selectmen, but viewing what happened last year, I don't view them as allowing us to be equal partners in that process. If you look at a whole bunch of other communities, they do have advisory meeting, again, Stowe, Wellesley. They actually meet with the individual departments. They choose departments to bring in to look at. Not all departments are brought in to look at their budgets. I mean, we did that the first couple of years that I was on. Actually sat down with individual departments and reviewed their budgets. Of course, the selectmen at that particular time did nothing because it was the whole process was kind of thrown up in the air when you had the accountant and the coordinator at that time both leave, and it was, where's this whole budgeting process gonna fall? And it really fell hard in 14 and again in 15 on the advisory. If we hadn't done anything, there probably wouldn't have been a budget. You can call it good, bad, or indifferent. That's what happened.
You know, I got a question for you, Will, just because I stepped out of the room for a minute here. I just wanted to, with that, you started off with the financing, and the $1.5 million and the
Yes.
breakdown. You said $18.50, a dollar increase and all this. Now, in there, and I didn't get it, and I don't have the history that, you folks do with the budget. But there was a mention of, 500 and something, $1,000 from, what the hell was it? There was some mention in the past of overpaying $500,000. And that, to me, seemed like, okay, well, that's gonna be a one-time, that's this year only.
Yep.
So, that dollar is not, $1. That's $1 this year.
It's about a
So we get
dollar.
at 1850 this year, then next year it goes up for the other 500,000 on that.
That's basically where your 60-cent increase came in because of that 500. That's
Yeah.
gonna go away, so you're gonna be back into the 1627 range per se. And when the school comes on, it's coming back on, folks. That 550,000 is coming back on. And oh, by the way, the middle school, they redid that and they strung it out longer, so that's gonna probably be on at least the first couple of years. And that's not gonna go away.
Well, the high school money is not going away.
No,
For
it
the
was the other
20 years,
500.
that got stretched to 2019, supposed to go away in 16, but that's gonna stay for another 28 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Add that to the $1.74,
Right.
it's like 52 cents, 53 cents,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, remember that, it was around 2.25.
Yeah, that's not going away, so I mean, his talking about dropping that off and dropping this 550, yeah, but the school is still a $1.5 million, I don't care how you cut it.
Mm.
I mean, I don't know, I just,
Yeah, eventually that will, short-term or whatever it is, eventually it's gonna come back on. It's,
Yeah.
he seems to have an issue when I talk about the numbers, as you heard him say earlier.
it's gonna come back.
His math, he does not like my math and pointing out that the dollars are the dollars.
So, all right.
Yeah, I think a lot of times we get caught with, we're talking like 3, 5, 10 years or whatever, and, the other person across the table is looking at today. Yeah, okay, but that, next year, that number is not accurate. And that, it's a nice selling point, but it's not, let's say, legit. My way of thinking. But anyway.
All right, the next item was a question from Will about remote participation for open meeting, for the town meeting, rather. I've sent an email in, and I haven't heard anything back yet. But I did print up a thing from the open meeting law guide, the most current one that's on the Attorney General's website. And it states, we have received inquiries about the exception for town meeting and the open meeting law, which a meeting of a public body allows remote participation. And this Attorney General, this present one, is carrying on the tradition or accepted practice since this new open meeting law came into existence, that they exempt town meeting from the open meeting laws. Now, whether if you post a meeting, say advisory committee posts a meeting for, the town meeting, that we're gonna officially meet, and that means we gotta take minutes and everything, if you can participate remotely at town meeting. It doesn't sound like you can, but, again, maybe that's the head scratcher, maybe that's why they're taking so long to, because usually if you email them something and they wanna give you an answer, I generally get a phone call, because a good state employee doesn't wanna be on the paper record, just in case they're wrong, or, what do you mean you told him that, If it's a phone call, he can always say, oh, no, you misunderstood. So, being how I haven't gotten a phone call or an email, anything back, that might be a head scratcher, or they might be busy down there, I don't know.
The reason I brought that up is that not only an annual and special town meeting is, there have been selectmen's meetings and advisory meetings just prior to the special or annual town meeting. Can you participate then? To me, I would think so, because that's a posted meeting and it's not subject, it's still subject to the open meeting law.
The one, just a couple of years ago, when the selectmen had a selectmen's meeting on the stage, but they didn't have a microphone, so you really couldn't hear what the hell they were saying. Although they contended you could, but I was standing right there. talking to a couple of people, and I'm looking at them up there, you can't hear them. And you're supposed to be able, you're not supposed to do things by secret ballot. The other thing I looked at is, town of North Andover, and they have a charter that gives the moderator, a lot of leeway and stuff. And he's done a lot of things to bring the town meeting up to, and their town meeting, you can't comment or offer up an amendment or something. But even before the town meeting, say you can't go, I worked that day, I can't go, but I got a question. You can email it, and the moderator will bring it up for discussion.
Oh, that's not a bad idea.
That's interesting.
And he's working on one of his ideas, he would like to do a virtual town meeting where you could be at home and FaceTime and shit. Unfortunately, the law is still on the books that don't allow for that, and practices, it's something
Well,
changing.
some towns actually have
But he's
a
a,
voting machine. Basically, they give you a clicker or a yes or no clicker when you walk in. And there's none of this yays or nays or whatever. It's a push of a button and it's done electronically and it's instantaneously and it speeds up the process.
so,
Not cheap.
No.
The other thing that I ended up asking Jeff about is remote participation allowed for a workshop? I mean, we might have a workshop, selectmen have a workshop. I would think that that's possible to take and end up having it at that particular time because it is posted. The community doesn't get to take and end up discussing anything. In fact, it sounds like they're not gonna be able to take and discuss anything at the selectmen's meeting in the future after the workshop. But I mean, I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
well, I mean, if the chairman doesn't wanna take any question or have any discussion, well, that's fine, but, good luck with that.
Well, there's a move afoot to not allow public to speak at selectmen's meetings.
Business meetings.
And if you end up, even when they give you comments, public comments at the beginning, if it's not on the agenda, you don't get an answer and they tell you to go wherever to get your answer. That seems to end up stymieing the democratic process for small towns. I can understand that in a larger community with a larger audience, I understand that. This is a small community.
So, that's where I am with that, as far as getting the questions answered. The other thing is, and Will, you mentioned this, back in November, there was an agenda item, and it was put off.
Yep.
Until another meeting date.
Yeah.
And it was, Advisory Committee Practical Handbook of Operating Procedures.
Yep.
And it's one that Will mentioned. So, I will put that on the next agenda.
You have Stowe's, which you can end up looking at, and also the one from Wellesley.
That's this.
The one from Stowe is more inclusive. There are shorter versions from other communities, like a one sheet. It doesn't get you to the full operating of the committee over long haul that you can end up passing off. It may not have enough detail that they can end up handing down. And some communities, I don't know if we'll ever get there, where we have an issue of getting people in this community, number one, to volunteer. But some communities have associate members which come to the meetings, and that's their training ground to end up, as people end up getting off, they draw from that. We have a struggling here to take and end up filling positions.
The last thing, just for a, I don't know, an update or whatever, is And I'll put this on the next agenda so we can vote, and I'll bring in the sheet for the accountant and stuff. But we did receive an invoice from VADAR for the training. Cloud user training was $1,000, and one cloud user prorated for a term of January to June 2018 of $350 for a total of $1,350 for this year. And next year it'll be $750, I think, $700. And this is, the invoice date was January 16th. So I'll bring the sheet that we all gotta sign, and we can vote on it to pay this. And for the next agenda, most of the time will probably be spent on the VADAR stuff. I think let's see, in the minutes, the invoice, the handbook, and we'll do the budget versus actual and the VADAR stuff, if we can line up the screen work and stuff. And we can all, look at what's actually in there. They'll have some time and look at those reports that Paul had generated to see what we actually can do.
One question before we adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Which is,
Did you get it straightened away about the keys that I turned in? You should have 3 keys.
I do have the keys.
You do have,
I have all 3 keys.
that's good.
So we can come in the building anytime now. We can revolt.
Yeah,
we can have meetings
whenever we
keys.
want, right?
That's right. We can meet on Sunday. We'll have lunch catered.
Okay, I move we have all our meetings on Sunday then. Have them catered.
The town of Hudson, not Hudson, Harvard has their reviews of all budgets on a Saturday. They spend the whole Saturday reviewing budgets.
They probably send out for lunch and stuff there
Well,
too,
that's-
because Harvard, they're kind of,
That's why-
Harvard.
That's where I thought he was going, that's why I said Harvard, so.
Well, no, I'm not advocating.
Jeff Ritter was from Harvard though, and he was kind of frugal. I wouldn't call him cheap, because I like the guy, but he was frugal.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All in favor of
Aye.
adjourning? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Yeah, let's stay.